Create a prosperous and ecosystem and you, my friend, you will act as God. Observe the whole process from desolation to prosperity. Of course, the story has to start from the first day of work at 10 o'clock in the morning. The construction team arrived one after another. The building materials are also delivered one after another. Master Waji started his first day of work in the rain after the hard work of the workers. This pond has a water inlet, a wetland filter, a waterfall, and a shallow water area. About a week later, the pond was finally completed. This is the overall scale of the pond. It is an ecological pond with a depth of about 30,000 deep water. The depth is about 1.5 meters. The water will be drawn to this area. This area is called the water entering bend. There is a scourer here responsible for cleaning the surface of the water. At the same time, there is a pond insurance area. The water is drawn up through the stones from here. The water is pumped to the filter pool. This is essentially a huge upstream swamp. The bacteria in the rock will evolve with the roots of the plants. Although the plants are not yet mature, but in 10 days, it will be covered by plants. In the process of construction, the original fish pond has been abandoned. The goldfish were temporarily placed in the breeding box. Now that the pond has been built, the digestive system and water quality are not stable, so the goldfish migration will have to wait a while. On the 40th day of the pond, the frogs moved in. First, watching them play happily in the pond, you are very happy because frogs have always been your favorite. But the intention of building this pond still for those goldfish. Speaking of goldfish, now it's time for them to move into a new home. First, fish the fish net. Let them adapt to the temperature and water quality first, then put the bucket on the water. Let them swim into the pond naturally, watching the fish from being cautious to being curious gradually evolve into excitement. That kind of satisfaction, I really can't describe it in words. These fish swim into the pond to smoke. Obviously, they enjoy their new home. This kind of happy scene will only last for a few weeks because winter is coming soon. Soon after, the fish will retreat to the bottom of the pond to rest and spend the winter there. 4 months later, the pond is in a state of sleep, just like time is frozen. The leaves are hanging in the ice. Most of the pond is also frozen, but don't be confused by the surface phenomenon just under the ice. Although there is not much flow, but the water is still flowing. Are you curious how does the pond maintain its vitality in winter? In fact, the answer is very simple. As long as it is adjusted properly, it is basically no problem. The basin of this pond is about 1.5 meters deep, far below the frost line, so even if the top of the pond is frozen, the bottom will not be affected. Pond will not be dug so deep. As long as the depth is about 50 centimeters, will not be affected by freezing. At the same time, the waterfall is still flowing under a thin ice layer. The water flow can ensure that there is enough oxygen in the pond so the fish can patiently wait for the arrival of warm spring. Although the fish-free pond looks a bit monotonous, but there is also a unique beauty. Especially at night, it will be even more charming. Here snowflakes drift, make the earth silver-plated. Hit the ground. The position of the whole eye is revealed under the thick ice layer, but these short sculptures and scenery will not always exist. The weather is getting warmer and warmer. Nature is also becoming more and more friendly to life. When spring comes to the earth every morning, there will be a very unique scream. It turned out to be the long-lived birds of Dongfei and Boeing. They went back to their nest. You left the nest last year because birds usually repeat use, but this year they seem to prefer the new location above the pond. At this time, the birds are busy building a new nest with mud and moss. This kind of bird is very cute. They specialize in flying insects and like to nest near man-made buildings or aquariums, so when building the pond, I also accidentally created an ideal home for them. When this pair of birds were nestling, the gentle rain In spring let the seedlings a few months ago get a return the flowers and flowers began to bloom so. Many wild animals were attracted that green frog has been in the ice for several months now yearning for the sun to collect warmth at the same time. Xiaolu also found a shelter under the nearby trees and shrubs. The fish also spent the winter safely. Becoming more active on the water, they will even stick their heads out and beg the master for food, but it's not time to feed because the temperature has not continued to warm in such a cold season. Goldfish can't digest food after moving. You can easily observe the overall appearance of the pond. The most obvious one is the increase in algae. Especially near the waterfall, this is very common in the new pond. Usually the appearance of algae. The main thing is that there are algae buns in the soil or water source. When building this pond, dig a lot of soil containing algae and piled up on the hill, so every time it rains the mud is directly flushed into the pond. Too many buns plus sunshine, it makes the algae fly. This is also the reason why the water becomes so muddy. The water was quite clear at first, so now we need to do some maintenance work first. Turn off the water pump, then use a high pressure washing machine to clean the algae. The cleaning work starts from the upstream. Let the residue flow along the stream and gather in the downstream. When the surface is clean, up all the garbage at the bottom of the waterfall. As for the small residue that cannot be picked up, just gently remove it from the water. Finally change a little water. Spring maintenance work is completed as the sun sets. When the night falls on the water surface and the surrounding scenery, a new sound appears. That sound is very loud. You are familiar with this sound. That is the spring rain frog, different from many species that like warm weather. Spring rain frogs are the most active in the cool transition period and early spring. These little guys can climb and cling to objects, so they can often be found in reeds and other plants close to the water. This is just the first batch of spring rain frogs, so there are only a few bears here tonight because the algae has just been cleaned. The water surface looks very clear, but this is not a long-term solution. If you want to solve the problem completely, you have to do something about the hill, especially the area on the right. Don't talk about rain here. Blowing air can also blow the soil into the waterfall, but for now you plan to plant some simple plants to fix the soil. First use a rake to clean the stones in the soil, then spread the soil loose. Then you can start sowing. From a long-term perspective, this is not the best way, but doing this can see the effect very quickly. Just when the seeds were sown, spring rain frogs appeared again, and judging by the sound, there seems to be a few more teams singing together. This time they are very small. An adult bear-type spring rain frog. It's only about 3 centimeters long, but their voices can be heard within a kilometer. Doesn't it feel amazing? At the same time, there was a big change in the water. A special species appeared. It's a toad. To be honest, the screams of these guys are more piercing. They are everywhere in the whole well. Some are in the waterfall, some are in the pot, and in other places. Like the spring rain frog, bear type usually arrives first. Attract potential partners by screaming. This symphony lasted all night. It will continue in the next few days. At the same time, you also observe it's been longer than the toad staying in the nest, but they are not nesting. It's a group of eggs. In turn, there are only 4 small eggs in the nest. 3 of them are very clean, and the other one seems to be covered with mud. And the next time the parents of the birds will lay eggs in turn, but just in the middle of the shift, let the parasitic bird have a chance. Maybe you guessed it, that's right, that egg is actually a completely different species it comes from. The toad. The toad is a typical parasitic bird. This kind of bird does not nest but lay eggs in other birds' nests. It's similar to the azalea. Usually in this case, if the bird fails to identify the true identity of the egg, it will raise the toad. However, it's not that simple. Parasitic birds usually Therefore, it will compete with the original main bird. In order to help the child gain an advantage in the competition, parasitic bullfrogs returned to the nest and took away a parasitic bird egg not long after. The parasitic mother came back. It's like usual, the egg is full of new life. As the night fell, the spring rain began to fall. After the thunder, the cry of the frog rang around again. The spring rain frog screamed with full strength. It's a pity that they still couldn't find a mate. The cicadas didn't give up after all. The number of male parasites is far more than the number of parasites, so they have to stick to it. Any movement in the water may be a potential mate, so they will never let go of it as soon as they have a chance, even in the face of the cries of male parasites. It will also make them have the illusion that it is a female parasite. Of course, after a brief touch they will separate. Fortunately, the effort to eliminate it eventually paid off. A female parasite appeared in the middle of them. At the beginning it was not interested in the male parasites around it, then quickly escaped their sight. But when it surfaced again, unexpected things happened. I thought it was fast, but I didn't think it was so fast. I only saw the male parasites holding the female parasites from behind. This is the so-called leopard. Doesn't it look amazing? It was still raining the next day. The mating activity of this female parasite created a perfect environment. The pair last night didn't seem to reproduce successfully, so this leopard may last for a while. The interesting thing is the female parasite seems to be more persistent during this period. You can often see the female parasites with the male parasites looking for a place that is more suitable for the leopard. When they were still looking for a warm bed, the weather began to get better. Such good weather lasted for a few days for the members of the parasite. This opportunity is extremely rare, but in the next few days the weather is getting colder, so this parasite party is temporarily quiet. There is only one last parasite left by the pond, waiting for the arrival of the goddess. Although it rained for a few days in a row, but the water is still very clear. This means that the weight of the wave has taken effect. The fish will still swim towards the female parasite. It's a pity that the weather is still too cold, can't feed the fish for the time being. A few days later, you suddenly thought of the last few days' deforestation. Did they succeed in the end? The amazing thing is, they really succeeded, because at the end you saw their place found a big group of eggs entangled in plants. It's not over yet. Then you found another group of eggs at the waterfall. At first glance, the magnetic movement strategy has a significant effect. In other words, there are tens of thousands of deforestation eggs in the pond. For these eggs, the only thing they need to worry about is the fish, but so far the fish shouldn't bother them yet, so I don't care. At the same time, there is also a pile of wetland filters here in a quiet corner, but what you are worried about is when the kudu hatching, they might swim along the waterfall. Bad luck, it might just hang. In order to ensure that they can successfully hatch, you decided to build a small water dam here. Isolate them in this area. Do it. You built a small water dam around it with rocks. Although it doesn't look very beautiful, but the problem is not big. I'll get used to it in a few more days. At this time, another species settled in the pond. That is the water myrtle. These little predators sliding on the water looking for prey. This little guy is particularly elegant and charming. When you watch them slide back and forth, you hear a new voice. This has happened several times. Just when you finally found the source of the sound, found it stopped on the hawthorn tree. This is a gray frog. Its soft color make it look perfect on the tree. However, the appearance of humans must have made it shy, because it is not calling, so it keeps that posture until the night. What a funny little guy. Speaking of frogs, those tadpoles, before it's almost grown up, in order for them to grow, then continue to optimize the facilities around the pond. The current overall plan is, in the designated plant area and open space, create a place for animals to relax. Obviously, this takes a lot Of time to complete, the first thing to do is to plant. Some plants, however, under the prescribed leisure area, it's full of solid rocks, there's no way it can only be lifted about 30 centimeters above the horizon to repair. First collect soil from other areas, then spread it evenly, used to lift the top of the seating area. Why is it called a seating area? Because this is a platform designed for a swing chair, and just a few weeks ago you measured and excavated this area and put a pillar at the same time. You also used dandelions spread to the lawn. If the situation is normal, about 15 days later dandelions will sprout and grow. The interesting thing is, when humans are spraying sweat, animals are also quietly observing. For example, the deer in front and the flying bird on the fence, and this timid tree frog. It's hard to see these guys in the daytime because they mostly like the old king's perspective. Soon the nightfall came again. After the heavy rain stopped, the night was filled with the noise of the past. Of course, this mainly comes from the silkworms and the spring rain frog. Ball pit party. Speaking of the ball pit party, the recent situation is a little different. At least 50 silkworms are scattered around tonight. That's a lot more than the night before, and a scream like a cadet. A magnetic silkworm was attracted. It slowly jumped to the shore. Not good. There are at least. Long after the silkworm was ready to dive into the water, seeing the silkworm like a hungry dog locked it up. But who can succeed? Not yet known, but not far away there is one more strange thing. Only see a male green frog hold tightly to a male silkworm, and this male silkworm is in line. Although this scene is a bit thought-provoking, but due to the existence of species differences and reproductive isolation, silkworms and frogs cannot mate and reproduce. Speaking of frogs, the effort of the spring rain frog finally paid off, because there was a magnetic rain frog compared to silkworms. The spring rain frog seems to be more secretive. That is to say, the mating of the spring rain frog has not been recorded by you, but in the process of chasing the rain frog, humans have discovered many other frogs like this big tree frog. He came to this stone and began to scream when humans walked in. I also found a delicious guy, an American bullfrog. He is still very young, maybe moved here earlier, because since the pond was built, this is the first time to discover the existence of bullfrogs. Next, let's talk about the big tree frog. This guy is so disguised, lying on the ground just like a piece of bark on a stone. This night there are more than 80 frogs around the pond. To some extent, all of this is a bit of a coincidence, because this is the last night of the frog breeding season. The team's frogs must reproduce the next day. This process takes some time, because porcelain will produce thousands of eggs at a time, and the male needs to breed up to 20,000 eggs. The pair in front of you is the last nest in the confirmed nest. This means that there are at least 180,000 eggs in the pond. Although there is a good start, but it can reproduce and reproduce frogs and cicadas. Its survival rate is estimated to be only about 1%. This number is quite small. All this reproduction in just a few weeks. It's done due to the difference in the production date. The smallest batch of eggs is less than a day old, and the biggest one has become a tadpole at this time. I'm looking for my mother, but they are not the only newly hatched creatures. During this period, the cicada has been anxiously guarding its own nest. In the process of hatching, it can be found they will slowly rotate the eggs in the nest to ensure the normal growth of the embryo. I don't know if you still remember, the tadpole switched the eggs of the cicada just as expected. The cicada cub was the first to hatch. Of course, birds don't have much brain capacity, so the cicada will take this cub as its own child a few days later. Other eggs also have signs of hatching, however. When they successfully hatch, the cicada has grown a lot. Most of the time in the nest they grow together, but the difference in size has an impact in the end. They were killed when the third egg finally hatched. Same as the only bird The cicada grows faster when it has enough strength to stand and observe the surrounding environment. Its instinct will take effect, that's right. It flew away in nature. Sometimes it looks like it's a little cruel, but the development of life, it's often a surprise. A lot of things don't look that simple. The nest of the cicada and the bird, it's often the target of the cicada. I'm sure they know that very well. Although on the surface they may look helpless, but these birds of the same species, they actually have their own ways of dealing with it. For example, every season can reproduce 2 nests. Of course, all of this needs time to verify, and now they are immersed in the moisture of the rain in spring. They are not the only ones, because the cicadas often walk in the rain and eat the leaves on the edge of the forest. Not long after the rain began to become fierce and it rained for many days in a row, the grass and plants around were grateful for the rain. The rain provided them with the power to continue to grow and solve the problem of water accumulation. The cicada that used to come to the pond alone now seems to prefer to hide in the lily buds. However, at this moment it is no longer alone, but it has a competitor. But this lively scene, it will calm down soon. Wait until the next morning. A shocking scene appeared. There are cicadas everywhere. It's just everywhere. It's not the same as before. These new cicadas can climb up and down at will anywhere they want to go. Some are on the stone, some are by the water, some are floating on the wood. There are even a few in line. What is surprising is that compared to the previous species, their male and female numbers are so balanced. That is to say, this kind of gathering only happens at night, because they may come out all at once instead of slowly gathering when the cicada makes a cry. The cicada will carefully select the object. The interesting thing is that the cicada is particularly picky, just like this one in front of me. At first, he was attracted by a cicada near the water bend, but after thinking for a while he was not satisfied, so he went back to the water. Finally, he climbed a stone, staring at the other one for a while. I feel hopeful, but in the end he still gave up. That's because the one on the stone behind caused his attention. It's a pity that this interest didn't last long. In the end, the original cicada got his approval, and then they hugged. This phenomenon is not rare. It can be seen all night long. It reminds me of the summer nights. At that time I always slept with the sound of the cicada. Now I live in a bustling city. It's hard to find such a pure cicada. What's even more amazing is they have a sharp sense of perception. They can accurately find the source of the water. Sometimes they even have to shoot for several kilometers. Seems a bit tragic, because their eggs are like fish eggs, floating on the water, although they didn't see it with their own eyes. But we can guess that the cicada must have eaten them all. It's heart-wrenching to think about it. I hope they can find a better living environment next year. At the end of the mating season, the cicadas have left the pond, and the cicadas left behind are leisurely in the new quiet. And now it's time to repair the pond function. The first thing to do is to install a simple water pipe to make sure that the water won't accumulate here and make the soil wet. On top of this, we need to lay a layer of earthwork to prevent soil loss. If we lay another layer of stone, it should work better, and then we repair it to make it look more beautiful. According to the repairs, the waste soil produced by digging the pond is also slowly decreasing. In the past, this place would turn into a mudflat every time it rained. But now it's not. Then there are some work to do. For example, to elevate the entire area in order to bury the water pipe, just like what we did before. First, mud is transported from elsewhere and then cover it. The purpose of elevating this area is to bury the water pipe, so we need to raise it about 25 centimeters. This is undoubtedly a big project. Then compact the soil and add earthwork on the edge. Then let the French water pipe pass through this area. Just like just now, lay a layer of earthwork and a layer of stone. The interesting thing is icebergs seem to like humans. The adjustments made to the landscape since the last time, and the conflict between the crane head and the Cow they have been carefully tidied up, now it's starting to lay eggs again. In the process of laying eggs there are new lives in the process. For example, tadpoles. These tadpoles have just hatched at this time, the body is still very small. Swimming skills are not very good at the same time. The tadpoles before have grown a lot now. Every corner of the pond is full of tadpoles. The scene is really spectacular. This also brings a question. They like to rest in the newly grown jujubes. You especially want to clean up these jujubes, but I'm afraid to hurt them, so I can only wait until they become frogs. Their activities at night are also very active. You can imagine seeing tens of thousands of tadpoles swimming in the water. What a beautiful sight. They play with the fish under the light, create a beautiful picture. At the same time, the green frog over there is looking at them curiously. I guess he's also missing his childhood. Although it is not yet possible to clean up the jujubes, but it is still possible to plant some plants first. Clean up the roots of the plants, then scatter them all over the landscape. The interesting thing is the tadpoles in the pond are always curious about what humans time. In addition to flowers and plants, you have to raise the ground a little. I'm going to build another resting area. Put a pillar on the ground first, then fix it with mud after completion. It's probably like this in the middle of work. You can always hear a faint scream. That's because the eggs of the insects are hatching. This time he successfully laid 5 healthy eggs. Fortunately, from laying eggs to hatching, no disturbance. The newborn birds are very interesting. They always scream with their mouths open, so in the long term you can always see the couple of birds collecting insects with all their might. They will track the prey from one place after capture, then land in another place. Check the surrounding situation. After confirming safety, they fly back to the nest, feed the young birds, then repeat this process as the birds grow. This noise will last for hours every day because of the parents' hard work. The young birds grow very fast. Just a few days ago they hardly had the strength to move, and now they are very alert and get to know the outside world more and more at the same time. The original nest, it's hard to accommodate these energetic young birds. Fortunately, the young birds are curious about the outside world. Also reached the top. A brave young bird walked to the water pipe, and the other one followed closely, but maybe there was no stability. The little guy almost fell. This mistake let the little guy's courage disappear in an instant. Just dare to squat around the nest, shivering, and the other young birds are looking around. It seems to be looking for their parents. In the end, this little guy still returned to the nest next. The 4 young birds dare not go out again. The mother bird seems to have found this. She called on a tree on the roof and the edge of the forest, trying to lure the young birds out of the nest. At first they still dare not, but the mother bird didn't get used to them as the interaction between the young birds and their parents became less and less. They began to feel anxious. In the end, a young bird plucked up the courage, jumped into the water pipe in order to find his mother. He began to try to fly 5 times, although he couldn't fly right away at this time, but luckily he successfully landed on the ground. This new environment made him feel anxious, but this situation didn't last long, because his 2 brothers, young birds, are on the ground. Their parents are constantly calling to attract their attention. At the same time, lure the young birds into the forest, but soon you find that the call of the bird is a warning signal, because there is an eagle hovering above. In recent times, the eagle often flies over the pond to check the situation. In other words, he must have been paying attention to this tide. Maybe he noticed the existence of humans. He only hovered for a few minutes and left. There is no doubt that if you are not there, several young birds may be in danger. As the potential danger disappears, the birds finally relax. The young birds are also preparing for the flight. This little guy plucked up the courage, but just flew for a while. Then he clung to the house, don't know what to do next. Under the encouragement of his mother, the young bird finally calmed down and started the first complete flight of the Bird. Interestingly, the other one is much slower than the bird. It seems that his flying talent is relatively poor. He jumps along the house every step he takes, calls for his parents. At the same time, there is still the last bird in the nest. He has been hatching for many days. He doesn't have the ability to leave at this time. The landscape has always been the key component of this pond, but it is far from being completed in this bad red season. Only flowers can break through its cave. As the flowers grow more, some butterflies and bees are also starting to be attracted. At the same time, you also notice that there are many green frogs now. They are all gathering in different corners of the pond. This big bear frog is either begging a porcupine or fighting for territory, but no matter what, these two guys just keep jumping like this. I don't know how long it lasted. On the other hand, there is also a new situation on the road, because now they have a baby. There are two mother deer in front. Each one carries two babies. Interestingly, the adult deer is quieter and the baby deer is completely the opposite. They always jump around. Even the butterflies on the road are very interested. At the same time, another child is about to grow up. 5 days have passed before the distance. The last baby bird also has the ability to leave. Under the mother's encouragement, the baby bird began to leave slowly, safe landing at the top of the pond. Although it is very insecure at the moment, but in the end, it is still guided by its parents. Walk slowly towards the forest. As the baby bird gradually approaches the safe area, the mother can't help singing. They all disappear in the forest and spend the rest of this season there. Go south in winter, then go back to the pond to reproduce next spring. This also allows insects to get a chance to breathe from being captured. Then you spent time to build a garden of passers-by. There is a mini waterfall inside for them to drink. These details dynamic of the pond. Soon the butterflies and bees began to enjoy the flowers. Although this is amazing, but on the surface a meticulously designed microworld is playing a role. All kinds of invertebrates occupy almost every inch of space. Basically, invertebrates are the pillars and foundations of any healthy ecosystem. Without them, nothing can run normally. For example, frogs will have nothing to eat. Birds will not be able to feed their young. This is an ecosystem. The purpose of planting flowers is not only to appreciate the moon. More importantly, it is to provide insects with a place to find nectar or pollen. Therefore, this has become a very active area next to the pond. Butterflies, invertebrates, bees, and other creatures are constantly busy here. There are even bees and birds. This is a strange creature. They look like bees, but they are actually geese. Next, let's take a look at another creature. This is a toad. They like to treat this plant as a refuge. Toads are harmful to most creatures, but in the eyes of insects they are incredibly delicious. This toad is hunting, longing to track them. What makes toads depressed is the toad finally found them and ate them. In addition, there will often be some water plants in the water and finish their transformation to beautiful creatures on the shore. Green dragonflies are like beautiful gems by the pond. They fly back and forth, occasionally stop on the plants on the shore. Just like all things, some creatures grow up and some are not. Fortunately, their remains will not be wasted, because ants are always ready for recovery. Speaking of ants, these micro-shaped creatures are definitely the key to the prosperity of the ecosystem. Here the ants are walking around the pond. They are walking back and forth in the heat, collecting food for the ants hidden at the bottom. In addition, their existence also promotes the growth of a type of pest, for example bees on the water lily. Ants will often feed them in exchange for the excrement of the bees. That is a kind of honey called honey. This makes the water lily look devastating. In addition to daytime, there are also many stories at night. As night falls, the animals in the middle of the night begin to appear. For example, spiders, fake insects, and moths. At the same time, the fish and tadpoles are happily swimming in the backlit water. They are unaware of the surrounding environment. Occasionally there will be a few pandas appear in the middle of the stone searching for fish food. That may fall, and in the sky above the bats fly around. Quickly, it's just a waste of time. However, the real activity is still to be mentioned: the surrounding area of the pond. Only thousands of light spots shining from the tail of the firefly. They are looking for each other, longing for mating. At the same time, something the pond, those tadpoles who have lived in this water area for several weeks at this time. The perverted development from tadpoles to beetles is being completed. Some are still dragging their tails, and some have taken the first step on solid ground. These little beetles are almost as big as their nails, and everywhere they like to hide in moss, plants, or rocks, because these places are their favorite hunting grounds, and any tiny creatures are on their menu. The area near the top of the waterfall is especially full of beetles. Their parents know how to produce so many eggs, so the beetles became the boss of the pond for a short time. As for why they are the boss for a short time, because they are also on the menu of other animals. The unripe body shape makes them extremely vulnerable to predators. Unfortunately, there are spiders everywhere on the ground. They are much bigger than beetles, except for spiders. Their biggest enemy is the snake. Although these beetles are very cute, but if they don't eat, they may affect the ecological balance. The little beetles are currently growing in the area near the pond. As they grow, their habitat will slowly move to the woods. However, they are not the only animals that are growing. The bullfrog that happened to appear in the spring also regards this pond as home and is growing. Interestingly, almost after the beetles just left the pond, new creatures appeared. The long silent goldfish finally started to reproduce. Only small fish are everywhere in the water. This scene is very exciting because this is just a good start. With the departure of the tadpoles, you can finally get rid of the jujubes. During this period, you also noticed some small movements nearby. That is, a little pigeon is guarding a nest of eggs there. A few days later, the eggs also began to reproduce. Just like the previous insects, the birds grew up under the care of the mother bird and successfully left the nest. As the life story by the pond continues to play, the small ecological world is getting more and more lively in the future. Every life here will continue to write a wonderful chapter of their own. Alright, friends, that's the end of this video. I'll see you next time. Bye. Bye.